Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so glad that you could join me again. So, the new season of Bridgerton has begun on Netflix, and I don't know about you, but I absolutely love the show. It has the most beautiful houses, architecture, gardens, clothes, food. It's just a real delight for the senses, and I really enjoy watching it. So for today's episode, I thought I would do something a little bit fun and show you how you can live more like a Bridgerton. From creating the perfect afternoon tea at home to some advice about manners and etiquette, I'll also show you how to create your own flower arrangement, and then I'll give you some tips to improve your conversation skills so that you can work the room like a duke or duchess at your next party. So whether you've seen the show or not, I think this is something fun and enjoyable for us all that we can learn something from too. So let's get started. It's going to be really fun. So if you've seen the show, you will know that the best conversations and gossip happen over tea. I'm going to show you how to create your perfect tea party at home that will truly impress your guests. The key to an elegant finger sandwich is preparation. Cucumber is a traditional sandwich and is a refreshing snack that goes well with tea. First, peel the cucumber, then you can cut it into very thin slices which we'll then layer on to our bread. This bread is crustless, which is a big time saver. To cut it into fingers, use a serrated knife and then gently saw back and forth. This will give a clean cut and elegant finish. Next, I'm making a ham sandwich with mustard. This bread still has its crusts, so we will need to remove them. You don't have to waste the crusts. I like to freeze them and then use them for croutons in my soups. One of the things I enjoy about watching the show are the beautiful interiors and sets, and in them you always see these gorgeous flower arrangements. So I'm going to show you how to create a very simple one for yourself at home. I have this large container and I'm going to fill it with chicken wire. This is a much better alternative to floral foam, which is generally bad for the environment. Cut the wire into small sections and form a ball. You can then place it into the container and fill with water.
get the best out of your flowers, cut them at an angle so they can absorb more water. I'm going to place these alstroemeras around the outer edges of the container, as the leaves will fill a lot of space and be our base. Next, I'm adding in white roses. I start by placing one upright in the container and then pretty much randomly wherever I feel is best. Now I'm adding in some pink roses to provide a contrast. These soft pastel colours are very typical of the ones they used in Bridgerton. To finish, I'm adding in some more of the alstroemera, but throughout the centre to fill any gaps. Now I'm going to set the table. I'm using our flower arrangement as the centerpiece. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I'm using some of my favourite china, linen and tea to finish off my table.
So people often ask me for tips about etiquette when it comes to afternoon tea in particular. And actually, I am not the kind of person who gets too hung up about rules. I think they make parties dull and it makes other people feel nervous. So I really just like to have fun when I have a party, and I don't really focus on the rules. I want people to be relaxed and enjoying themselves. But I do know that there are a few things that you can do to really enjoy a traditional afternoon tea and do things the proper way. So let's start with tea. Now, I always have two pots on my table. I usually have a silver teapot, and what I do, that's very hot, and that's good because that's what it's supposed to do. This is to keep my hot water so that it stays hot, and then I can keep topping up our teapot with that. So I always like to have two, and then this is the teapot that I serve with. Now with traditional tea, you usually have loose leaf tea. So I have my loose leaf tea here, and what you do, the general rule is that you add 1 teaspoon of tea for the pot and 1 for how many guests you have. So if you're having 3 people for afternoon tea, you would have 4 teaspoons of tea in your pot. Another good tip is to warm the teapot before you serve your tea. It just makes the tea taste better. And the best way I do this is just to pour a little bit of boiling water in the pot, give it a little swish around and then tip it out, and that will warm the pot nicely to prepare for your tea. So you add the tea to your pot. Loose leaf tea is always so fragrant, and this one has rose petals in it, so it's even more beautiful. I'm just going to add 2 because it's just me and you. And then you can add in your boiling water, and you will let this sit for about 3 minutes before you serve so that it can brew properly. It is always polite to, if you're hosting, to pour the other person's tea first, and with loose leaf tea you will need a strainer. So I have that here. You can either pop it on like that, or you can just hold it over the teacup and then you simply pour the tea in there. If you are a guest at someone's tea party and you want to have your tea refilled, it is always best to offer the person who's serving the whole cup and saucer rather than just passing them the cup. It's just a more elegant way of doing it. Okay, so that has brewed for about 3 minutes. Let's pour our tea. And you can see it catches the leaves. Now this is a black tea, so you probably would serve it with milk. I like it just as it is. If you are having milk or sugar, I don't take sugar either. There is generally a best way to stir your tea. So instead of stirring it like this, which can be impolite and a bit noisy, you can look at the teacup as a clock face, and if this is 12, this is 6, just move the spoon backwards and forwards between 12 and 6, and that is a more delicate way to stir your tea. So let's talk about everything else. Here we have our tiered tray with our afternoon tea. Probably wouldn't normally have one of these at home, it's more for a hotel or a restaurant, but it is a fun and beautiful thing to have. Not something you would use every day, so if you're having a party, it probably would be fun to use this. It usually works with sandwiches and savouries being at the bottom tier, that's why it's the biggest. And then you've got a smaller one for scones, and at the top you have a little one for cakes and pastries. There isn't really a lot I can tell you about the rules or etiquette of eating. I think, again, just do whatever you want, but you usually just take the sandwich onto the plate and eat it with your fingers. You don't need to use any cutlery. Sometimes you might want to slice it in half with a knife. It's up to you, but I would just put them onto the plate and enjoy. It's very simple. With scones, if they're baked correctly, you should be able to just break them with your hands rather than cutting them with a knife. So let's give this one a go. Perfect. We usually serve scones with jam and cream. I only have jam. I'm not really a huge fan of cream, so I didn't get it. And the best way to do this is just to take a little bit of jam onto the side of your plate and then give it back to the other person so that they can use it. And then you can just take a little knife and spread on the scone yourself and enjoy. Now I wanted to give you a few tips so that you can work the room like a duke or a duchess when you attend your next party or gathering. You know how it is when you go to a party and there are lots of people who you've never met. It can be daunting. It's hard to work the room, but I'm going to give you a few tips to help ease that situation. So if you've never met somebody before and you want to start a conversation with them at a party or at an event, it is important to make a really good first impression and try to think of something to say that will instantly build a rapport and entice conversation. So my advice is to have about 3 or 4 things that you can say to someone for the first time that you can keep in your mind and always use when you're attending a party. One of the things that I always like to do is to look at, for example, what they're drinking. If it looks like a really nice cocktail, a great way to approach someone and begin a conversation is something like, "Wow, that drink looks so good, would you recommend it?" And then they will be immediately responsive back and tell you, "Yeah, this is a really delicious drink, you have to have it," or, "Oh, no, I'd get something else." And that really does start the conversation. You can then say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so," and the conversation begins. Another really great conversation starter, one that I always use, probably a little bit too much, it's my little safe one, but it works, so why not, is asking the other person how they know the host. This is a great one because it gives you something in common with the other person immediately. Presumably you will both know the host because they will have invited you there, so asking them how they know the host is a really great way to begin. They can tell you their story and then you can feed off from there. So yes, just have a few of these little openers that you can use with a stranger so that you can get the conversation started and then keep it going. So if you're looking to spark up a conversation with perhaps someone you've met once or twice before, or you don't really know that well, I always think the best way is to pay them a compliment. This is a really great way to begin the conversation. It creates a positive atmosphere for you both to have a great conversation, and it's cool to be nice. Now, when you're paying your compliment, make sure that it is genuine. Don't say something that isn't true or that you don't really believe. it will come across as fake. People will be able to tell. And also try to be specific with your compliment. So instead of just saying to someone that they look nice, pick something that you actually like the most about their outfit or the way that they look and use that. For example, you could say, oh, those are really great shoes. And that is something specific. The person will see that you've really honed in on that particular detail, and it is a great way to begin the conversation. They'll probably start telling you about the shoes, and it really will bring the conversation to a good start. My second piece of advice is to make the other person feel like they are the most fascinating person in the room. When I talk about this, I'm not saying it in a disingenuous way. I actually mean you yourself think of this person as the most fascinating person in the room and to really want to talk to them. What I've learned actually is that most people are pretty interesting and fascinating. We all have our own stories and lives, and all it takes is a little bit of interest to really bring out the best in the other person and get a great conversation going about them. So when I say make them feel like the most fascinating person in the room, do it in a genuine way, listen to what they're saying, instead of kind of trying to find something where you can tag on to the end of the conversation about yourself, ask another question about what they've just told you, and they will feel like they're being valued, listened to, and you really will think of them as the most fascinating person in the room, and that will create a great conversation. My final tip for great conversation is just to make sure that you keep abreast of current affairs and the news. Now, I know that now more than ever, the news is particularly depressing. It's not something that is fun, but I know that whenever I've been to any event or party, someone is going to mention what is going on in the world at the time, and if you don't really know anything about it, or you haven't got something to say, it can be awkward, embarrassing, and it will make you feel inadequate. So even just for yourselves, make sure that you keep abreast of current affairs so that you've got an opinion about what's going on in the world, and then you can go back and forth with someone and have a conversation about that. It's really just for yourself so that you don't feel under pressure or embarrassed if you can't talk about something that someone asks you. That being said, I do not enjoy talking about politics or things like that at a party or an event. I much prefer talking about fun things and debating with someone. I think that isn't fun for me. So I personally don't like to talk about those things and try to avoid them. But it is always a good idea to know what's going on in the world. Well, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you have enjoyed this episode, found it fun and useful. I look forward to seeing you next time, but until then, take care and watch out for Lady Whistledown. Bye bye.